This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC and your daily reminder to stop pissing your pants because the Reds are still top of the league. And yes, we're in a funky bit of form at the moment. Yes, we have dropped points in 4 of the last 7 league games. But perspective here, people. We have widened the gap over these 7 games on Chelsea. We have widened the gap on Manchester City. The gap has remained the same with Arsenal because they've dropped points in 3 of their last 6. And in that time period, they've also lost at home in both cup matches, lost Bukayo Saka potentially for the rest of the season, but likely until April. They've lost Gabriel Jesus, their second best attacker and only other creative attacker outside of Saka for the rest of the season. They haven't won more than 3 Premier League games in a row at any point this season with Bukayo Saka. So why do people think they're going to run off 8 or 9 in a row without Bukayo Saka? And I hear this nonsense about how, oh, they're a better defensive team than us. Are they? And what is that based on? Because I look at it and I see both teams have played 31 games this season between the Premier League, Champions League, EPL Cup and FA Cup. And both teams have conceded 26 goals. So how are they better than us? Because we're having a little bit of a shaky period? That doesn't make them better defensively than us. They give the perception of being better defensively than us because they defend with 6 and we defend with 2. Because we play a midfield without a defensive midfielder. We play a right back who sometimes wants to defend and a lot of times doesn't. And of late, and by of late, I mean for a couple of years, we've basically played without a left back because Andy Robertson's washed. We play with a back 2. They play with a back 6, and yet we've conceded the same number of goals. And you can say, oh, but they've had a harder run in the Premier League. Yeah, we've had a much harder run in the Champions League. We've also had a harder run in the EFL Cup, so it balances itself out. The notion that they're better defensively than us is not rooted in any sort of reality. And we're considerably better than them going forward. We've scored 13 more goals than them going forward. And they've played more lower league teams than we have. And again, why would you think that a team who hasn't won more than 3 in a row in the league this season is capable of running off 8 or 9 in a row? Where's the run that they're going to just rip through the league? They've got Spurs home. That's a derby. That's a tough game. Villa home. That's a top 4 caliber team. That's tough. Wolves away. New manager bounce. Matthias Cunha in unbelievable form. Arsenal struggling to score goals. That's a tough game. City at home. I don't care what situation they're in. That's a tough game. Leicester away, they should win easy. West Ham at home is now a much tougher game with Graham Potter in charge. Because West Ham will, by then, late February, be well into Potter's tenure, 6-7 games, and I think they'll be a lot harder to beat. But let's say Arsenal win that. Then they've got to go to Nottingham Forest. Then they go to Manchester United. Do you fancy them to go and win both of those games? I don't. Then they're home to Chelsea. That'll be tough. Home to Fulham. That'll be tough. Away to David Moyes' Everton. That'll be tough. Home to Brentford, who love a counter-attack. That'll be tough. Away to Ipswich. And then their finish is straightforward enough. Home to Palace. Home to Bournemouth. Both very good teams, by the way. Away to us, they're not winning that. Home to Newcastle, who beat them at the Emirates very recently and have beaten them twice this season. And then away to Southampton on the final day. Where is the run where they're just going to rip through the league without Bukayo Saka? Like, who's scoring the goals for them? Let's not forget that in this recent run, they drew at Fulham. They drew at home to a dreadful Everton. They beat Palace away. Jesus scored 2 of those goals. And if Palace don't open up to chase the game, I really don't think Arsenal are scoring the other 3. They stumbled past Ipswich. Didn't look at all good. They went to Brentford, scored 3. Brentford gifted them 2 of them. And then they drew at Brighton. And they should have lost. Brighton missed a couple of big chances in that game. Like, what are we looking at with Arsenal this season that we're supposed to fear? See, I have a theory on this. It's not that long ago that Liverpool fans were getting very, very concerned about Chelsea. Chelsea are the team to fear. Chelsea are right in this. Chelsea aren't going away. And in the last 5 games, they've taken 3 points. Against Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. The idea of them as a title contender was laughable to begin with. And that 5-game run proves it. Now it's pants pissing about Arsenal. But it's not actually about Arsenal. And it's not actually about Chelsea. It's always been about Man City. It's the scars of going through title races with City. Is why Liverpool fans are so worried right now. Despite the fact that we're currently 7 points clear of Arsenal, 6 clear of Forest with a game in hand, 10 clear of Chelsea with a game in hand, 12 clear of Newcastle, and 12 clear of City with the game in hand. But it's City that has people worried. Because people are still expecting City to come, as they always do, on a late season charge, overtake everybody, and win the league. They did it last year. They did it the year before. Now in 21-22, it was a little bit different where they led it. They actually stumbled, we caught up, and then they pipped us at the post. But still, everyone remembers that final day. It is the scars of title races against Manchester City that have left this fan base lacking belief in this team and their ability to get it over the line. And it's understandable. It is. where you just have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and again remind yourself, they're 12 points back and we have a game in hand. They're not winning the league this season. Manchester City are not winning the league this season. Their max points, if they won every game between now and the end of the season, is 86. And let me break the news that they're not winning every game between now and the end of the season. We talk about having dropped points in 4 of the last 7. They've dropped points in 5 of the last 7. But they've lost 2 games in that 7. And that 7 was better than the previous 7, where they dropped points in 4, but lost 4. City are done this season. The boogeyman has gone away. They're not coming back this year. And there's nobody else in the league capable of doing what they have done in the past. This Arsenal team are not capable of that. Even with Saka, they weren't capable of it. Without him, like if we lost Mo and Gakpo, right? If Mo was ruled out for 3 months and Gakpo was ruled out for the rest of the season, or Diaz, take your pick of either of them, would anyone suggest that we could win the league from where we are now, 6 clear with the game in hand, or 7 clear of Arsenal as it is? Without Mo for months and Gakpo for the rest of the season, or Diaz for the rest of the season, again, take your pick, would anyone back us to win the league? No, they would not. So why would you back a team who are 7 points back and have lost their equivalent players? Because they're not better than us defensively. They're just more defensive than us. But what that means is that they have a tougher time scoring goals. So yeah, they might be hard to beat the rest of the season. They're also going to find it hard to win games. They're so heavily reliant on set pieces without Saka in the team. And teams are figuring them out. Teams are getting a lot more physical with them on set pieces. They're not having the same joy anymore. They'll still get some, but they're not going to get as many. And they've never shown that they're capable of doing what City have done. If you take a look at Arsenal in recent years, right? If we go back to the 21-22 season and we look at Arsenal, they were nailed on for top 4. And then in the run-in, when the pressure got intense, what happened? They crumbled. Absolutely crumbled. And finished 5th behind a mediocre Spurs team. 22-23, they finished 5th the season before, so nobody has them marked down as a title challenger. And they take off at a rate of knots. They are flying because there's no pressure on them. And when we get into the back half of the season and City start to go through the gears and the pressure starts to mount on Arsenal, what happened? They crumbled. Last season, all the pressure was on them from the start of the season. Well, you've come that close. You led the league for over 200 days. A lot of people picked them to win the league last season, and what happened? They struggled through the first half. Come the turn of the year, the pressure was off them. because we were top. I think City were second, and they were like 7 points behind. No pressure. Arsenal find form, and away they go. Until it got tight again with City. And what happened? They went to the Etihad, knowing a win likely wins them the league, and they bottle it. They play for a 0-0 draw. You come into this season, all the pressure's on them. Klopp's gone, so Liverpool are finished. City have won 4 in a row. We haven't seen that before. We're not going to see 5 in a row. The vast majority of people were picking Arsenal to win the league this season. And what happened? They struggled through the first half of the season. Now, there's a difference this year than last year. It's not City they're chasing, it's us. We weren't expected to be here. All the pressure's still on them. This is season number 5 for Mikel Arteta. No manager has won a Premier League title if he hasn't won it in his first 5 years. Since the dawn of the Premier League, forget Ferguson. Since the dawn of the Premier League. They've spent 750 million. They broke a transfer record to get Rice, most expensive English player of all time. Huge expectation on them this season. And it's still on them now. And they've lost Saka, and they've lost Jesus. And their manager appears to be losing his grasp on reality. There isn't really anything to suggest they're going to go and run the table from here. They're struggling going forward. They're not as good defensively as people make out. They're just more defensive than people are willing to accept. The best attacker is not there. The second best attacker is not there.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Go to Blinds.com for 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
And they don't have a strong mentality. They don't have a strong mentality. Look at how they reacted to adversity this season. So they're playing Brighton at home. Rice gets sent off. And they lose complete control of themselves for about 10 minutes in that game. Rice was sent off for a lack of discipline. In the 10 minutes after that, Brighton scored, should have scored another, and Arsenal could easily have had a second player sent off, because Thomas Partey probably should have walked for a second bookable offence. They go to City. They're ahead. There's buses parked everywhere. Trossard gets himself sent off for a lack of discipline. And what do? They retreat into the biggest shell you'll ever see. The deepest deep block in the history of the Premier League. Losing mentality. Then they go and they play Bournemouth. They lose Saliba. And that's it. It's game over. As soon as Saliba goes off, you knew they were losing. because the mentality is not to go and try and win the game. Look at us when Robertson was sent off against Fulham. Look at how we reacted and how we played. We played to win that game. They played not to lose and ended up losing. The Newcastle game, a couple of decisions went against them. They spent most of the game crying at the ref. And then the Brighton game at the weekend, the penalties given on 61. Remember, they were ahead 1-0. Penalties correct. It's 100% a Stonewall penalty. It's given. And for the last 30 minutes of that game, they were a complete basket case. And everything was crying at referees. Referees, linesmen, fourth official. There was just tears everywhere. It looked like they were going to have to dig a trench from the Amex all the way down to the south coast to run the tears off into the sea. This team doesn't handle adversity. They don't handle pressure. They don't have their best attacker. They don't have their second best goal scorer and second most creative attacker. So, what is it that everybody's worried about? They're worried about City, the ghost of Manchester City. There is no City in the league this year. And yes, we're in a sticky patch. But I said this to Matchett on Scouted the other day, and I think I'm right about this. People have been saying, oh, well, Liverpool haven't had their blip. We're in our blip right now. My belief is that we're in our blip right now. If you go back and look at our performances, since we came off the international break in February, right, we were awful against Southampton. We played well against City. We were pretty awful up at Newcastle. We still should have won that game. The Fulham game was bananas. We were brilliant against Spurs for about 40 minutes. The rest of it wasn't quite as good. We weren't particularly great against Leicester. We were okay against West Ham. We were great in spurts, but there was a lot of that game where it was just very easy for us. We were dreadful against United, and we were awful for an hour last night. Now, Accrington doesn't count because they're a League Two team. But in the EFL Cup, we've also played Southampton and Spurs. The Southampton game doesn't count because it was an entirely rotated team. We were dreadful against Spurs. And in the Champions League, we were good against Real. We were bad against Girona. Like, I'd argue we've only played well 3 times. Like, actually well 3 times. And I'll give you the West Ham game for 4 since that international break. I think we're in our blip. But blips are about performance, not just results. You can have a bad run of performances and still get good to decent to good results. I think we're in our blip. And I think there's more to come from this team. Now, we have some concerns coming off last night's game. Gravenberch was awful for an hour. Genuinely awful. He was better at centre-back, but he had very little to do. I think he had about 3 bits of defending to do, and one of them he didn't do particularly well. 2 of them he did well on, but they were long pumps up the field. He was awful for their goal. He got bullied off the ball. He was hiding from... Not hiding is harsh, but he couldn't get himself in front of Gibbs White. And when he did, he didn't want the ball for an hour. Off the ball, he was a shambles. But he was better at centre-back. Dong didn't have an influential game. They were allowed to boot him out of the game. He was on the floor 3 times in the first 20 minutes, having been upended. Nothing was given, no yellow cards. Mo had a bad game. And I think that's 3 in a row for Mo. He was awful against United, awful against Spurs, and I thought he was pretty crap last night. That's 3 bad games in a row for him. But if anyone's earned the right to have some bad games, it is Mo Salah. So that's fine. Robertson was dreadful last night. Dreadful. But that's almost become par for the course. Diaz was bad last night. But the setup didn't suit Luis Diaz last night against that opposition. See, playing against them last night, you need to occupy their centre-backs. You have to occupy them and start moving them around. And we didn't. We made it far too easy for them. Murillo was able to be everywhere because he had nobody to mark. So he was just like a free safety in there, roaming around and just appearing whenever he needed to appear. I made the comparison on Scout on Raw last night for those of an NFL persuasion of like a Troy Polamalu or an Ed Reed maybe. Now he's built more like Ray Lewis, and you could see him as that kind of middle linebacker behind the defensive line, just like a tackling machine. Luke Kuechly, him as well. That kind of I don't know why I'm talking American football. You get my point if you're an NFL fan. Where he didn't have a specific assignment, he had the license to freelance. A libero in football terms. Normally that'd be a sweeper in a back three, where there'd be two stoppers who'd mark the forwards, and one guy could just buzz around and cover for everybody. He didn't need to cover for everybody because there was nothing to cover. We didn't play a striker last night. What we probably would have been better off doing was dropping Diaz a little bit deeper into a number 10 position and going to a diamond shape in midfield with Alexis deepest, Gravenberch and Szoboszlai as like the engine, Diaz as the 10, and then getting Mo and Gakpo to come more central. Not narrow as a front two, but a bit more central. Like a loose front two. And then have the fullbacks provide the width. Have the fullbacks hold wide. Because last night, Mo got the ball far too often, far too far from goal. Same thing with Gakpo. The two boys getting chalk on the boots. We don't want to see that. And Trent was ambling about in the middle of the field. Now, the reason Trent was doing that is because we had no central progression because Gravenberch couldn't or wouldn't get in the ball. And when he did, he wasn't offering anything. He had a couple of nice little moves. He had one dribble coming from right to left that ultimately ended in nothing. And he had that nice little hop to Mo and back that he shot over the bar. But that was it. That's literally all he offered in the first hour of the game. So Trent had to come more central. But by Trent coming central, it just meant that everything got even more clogged. And that Mo was now having to stand on the touchline. And this was my issue when Klopp and Linders were doing that inverted nonsense with Trent, was that it turned Mo into a chalk on the boots winger, which is not where we want him to be. Ultimately, we should have won the game last night. You know, they score with their first attack. They have two more shots on target, neither of which really threaten to go in. We score, and I want to come back to that. We score, and then their keeper makes two great saves from Jota, a good save from Mo, a really good save from Dom, and a really good save from Gakpo, and Mo has one cleared off the line. Like, we should have won that game comfortably. Despite what the commentators were trying to pretend was a basketball match or like a close run thing. This was not two titans going head to head. This was a titan beating the shit out of a minnow. Like, they're a good team, don't get me wrong. They're like the second in the Premier League. Saw someone say they're garbage earlier on. They're far from garbage. They're a really good team with a lot of really good players. There's a few players in that team I'd absolutely take at Liverpool. And then they've got Danilo and Sangaré to come back in, which will upgrade that midfield. But they're not on our level. We should have won that game last night. Like, we should have. But ultimately, a point is not a terrible result. Arsenal still have to go there. And if Forest play like they did last night, I think they'll cause Arsenal more problems than they caused us. On our goal, I've been waiting for Michael Reid or someone to confirm this. And if you've seen confirmation of this, can you let me know? Because I tweeted after the goal that it has to be the first time in Premier League history where two subs have come on and with their first touches, they've gotten an assist and a goal. And if anybody has confirmation that that is a fact, can you just let me know? I don't know that I've ever seen it happen at any level. Like, we've seen a number of players score a goal with their first touch. An assist with the first touch is rarer, much rarer, I would say. It can only really happen off a set piece. Like, it's rare that in the flow of a game, your first touch is going to be an assist. It will have happened, but not all that frequently. But I can't imagine it's happened many times, if any times, that two players have come on together. One has gotten an assist with his first touch, and the other has gotten the goal with his first touch. So if you know anybody that can find out if that's true, just let me know. Couple more things I wanted to touch on. Ryan Yates is a yard dog who wouldn't look out of place in a Tony Pulis Stoke team in the agricultural era of the Premier League. The referee, Chris Kavanagh, was an absolute disgrace. Like, appalling performance. Murillo should have been sent off in the first half. Two very clear yellow card offences. Free kicks weren't even given for them. Yates was allowed to just kick our lads left, right and centre. And then he was booked for the softest challenge he made all night. The only other Forest player who was booked was Gibbs White, who was booked for asking for one of ours to be booked. He just let them kick us all night long. And the commentators made out he was letting the game flow. No, he wasn't. He just had no control over it. And I still haven't figured out how Salah didn't get a penalty. There's not one foul, there's two. Nico fouls him, and then Armstrong fouls him. So I can only assume that there's some rule buried deep in the PGMOL handbook that says if three defenders go to tackle a forward, it doesn't matter if the first two foul him, as long as the third one gets the ball. Now, it may only be in the case where the attacker is an Arab fella, but I wouldn't like to speculate on that. I can tell you now, fucking Jack Grealish is getting a penalty for that, though. Let me be certain of telling you that. Jack Grealish, Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, them boys get a penalty for that. Mo, get up off the floor. But the thing that infuriated me the most, and I genuinely, if I could catch hold of him, I'd shave his head and then glue his hair back just onto his face so we never have to look at it again. Steve McManaman, just consider yourself no longer welcome. No longer welcome. Look, Steve McManaman has publicly wondered in the past why he's not beloved by Liverpool fans. It's because you're a prick. That's why. You're not quite Michael Owen, but you're not far off it. That commentating was just abysmal. I expected from Fletch. He's a fool. He doesn't know a whole lot about football. And he's also a Nottingham Forest fan. He made no attempt to hide last night that he's from Nottingham and, whatever. But the two of them were just an abomination. And at one point they actually praised Chris Kavanagh and said he'd gotten everything right and was having a really good game. and you just want to climb into your television, pummel them into oblivion, and then just in case you haven't finished them off, when you climb back out of the television, you put quick setting concrete in your ears so that you can't hear any more that they have to say. It was an atrocity listening to those two last night. An absolute atrocity. There's people in The Hague for less. Ugh. Dreadful stuff. Dreadful stuff. Right. I'm going to go and stop ranting and raving. But the message remains, stop pissing your pants. We're still top of the league. Arne Slot's decision, what Arne Slot's decision means for Elliott and Quansah. I think notable last night that neither of them were brought on. You know, I do think that's noticeable. There's a piece on the tactics from last night, a piece on João Pedro, a piece on Jota, and a piece on Jamie Gittins, who I could definitely see becoming a target this summer. Podcast-wise, there is the new transfer market metric show. There is Arne Slot's post-game press conference. There is the Gags Tandon show. There is the David Lynch podcast. And there is Post-Match Raw from last night, which is myself, Trev Downey, and Mr. Carl Matches. So, go give them all a listen. We've got plenty to come this week, and I will be back tomorrow to shout at you some more. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy your days. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.